This episode is brought to you by Voco Hotels by IHG, where you should prepare to be charmed. From Chicago to Myrtle Beach to Saranac Lake, each Voco in the U.S. has its own local flavor and unique detail. Our hosts welcome you with little extras, and you'll find rooms for catching up on me time and full-service bars and restaurants that are perfect for us time. Come on in and live the Voco life and book your next stay at VocoHotels.com. VOCO Hotels.com.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Business. We could all use more time. Amazon Business offers smart business buying solutions, so you can spend more time growing your business and less time doing the admin. I can see why they call it smart. Learn more at AmazonBusiness.com.
Welcome to From Dorms to Desks, job hunting tips for those early in their careers. A podcast brought to you by College Recruiter job search site, which believes that every student and recent grad deserves a great career, and hosted by Work Defined. Join our AI co-hosts as they dive into tips, tricks, and insights that will help you land your next part-time, seasonal, internship, or entry-level job. Let's get your career started.
So you're fresh out of school, ready to land that dream job, but the workplace is, well, a little different than what the textbooks described.
Yeah, it's definitely not your parents' workplace, that's for sure.
Exactly. We're diving into the evolving landscape of diversity in the workplace today, and we've got some really interesting articles from College Recruiter to guide us.
College Recruiter, yeah, they're like the go-to source for job seekers and employers. They always have their finger on the pulse of what's happening.
Right. And one thing's for sure, things are changing, and quickly. These articles paint this sort of a multifaceted picture. We see companies making strides toward inclusivity.
Which is fantastic, right?
Absolutely. But then there's this pushback against certain diversity initiatives, too. It's a bit of a head-scratcher.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag for sure. I mean, the data's pretty clear. Diverse workplaces, they're just more innovative, more profitable.
Totally.
But there's this debate about how we get there. How do we achieve real inclusion, and what does that even look like in 2024, you know?
It's not just some theoretical debate either. This stuff has real-life consequences. Like, one article cites this stat from the Trevor Project, and it's pretty jarring. Over a third of LGBTQ young people experience discrimination at work.
It's a staggering number, and it shows that just having diverse faces in a company isn't enough. We need to make sure everyone feels safe, respected, able to truly be themselves.
It's about creating an environment where people can thrive, not just survive. And speaking of thriving, one of the articles actually dives into some concrete steps employers can take to be more inclusive, especially for LGBTQ individuals. What were some of the things that stood out to you?
Well, I think what's important, and this came up a few times, is going beyond just the surface level. You can't just slap a rainbow on your website during Pride Month and call it a day. It's about creating a culture of genuine respect and allyship all year round.
Yeah, it's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk. So how do companies actually do that? How do you translate those values into everyday actions?
Well, Chris Bright from the Trevor Project, they work directly with LGBTQ youth, and they outline 3 really impactful strategies that any company, large or small, can implement. And the fascinating thing is, these actions, they don't just benefit a select group. They actually create a better environment for everyone.
I like the sound of that. A win-win for everyone.
Okay.
So let's hear it. What's strategy number 1?
Bright starts with this idea of companies overtly voicing their support for the LGBTQ community.
Okay, that sounds simple enough, but why is that so important, especially for, say, a young person just starting out their career?
It's about that sense of belonging, especially for young people who might be figuring out their identity, maybe facing rejection elsewhere. They did a study, actually, and over half of LGBTQ youth said that they feel more confident, more secure in their identity when they see companies taking a public stand.
Wow, it's that feeling of, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. That can make all the difference, especially in a professional setting.
Exactly. And it goes beyond just feeling good. When people feel safe to be themselves, they bring their whole selves to work, they're more engaged, more creative. That's good for everyone.
Makes sense. Okay, what's the next strategy? Bright highlights.
Something that comes up a lot, but it's worth repeating because it can have a huge impact. Bright talks about normalizing the use of pronouns in the workplace.
Pronouns. Now, I know this might seem like a small thing, but why is it so important in the grand scheme of creating an inclusive environment?
It's not about being politically correct. It's about respect, you know? It's acknowledging someone's identity, who they are at their core. Think back to the Trevor Project's work. Mental health and well-being are so crucial, and feeling safe, respected, seen for who you are is fundamental to that. Using someone's correct pronouns, it's a simple yet powerful way to show that respect.
It's those everyday interactions,
Yeah.
right? They might seem small, but they all add up. It's not just about tolerance. It's about recognizing someone's humanity.
You got it. And when people feel that respect, they're more likely to be engaged, more productive. Again, it benefits everyone.
It's a win-win, like you said.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got companies openly supporting the LGBTQ community. We've got normalizing pronoun usage. What's Blight's third recommendation for a truly inclusive workplace?
This one focuses on allyship, which sounds great in theory, right? But it can be tricky to put into practice. It's got to be more than just empty gestures.
Right, I can see how that can be a bit of a slippery slope. What are some examples of walking the walk, not just talking the talk, when it comes to allyship?
Bright gives some really practical examples, implementing inclusive policies like healthcare that covers transgender employees or equitable family leave for same-sex couples. Another one is employee resource groups, or ERGs.
ERGs, I've heard of those.
Yeah, they're employee-led groups that create a safe space for LGBTQ folks to connect, support each other, and even advocate for changes within the company.
It's like having a built-in support system at work. Are there other tangible things companies are doing?
Oh, absolutely. Even something as simple as the office layout can make a big difference. Like, having gender-neutral bathrooms sends a strong message. It's really about considering everyone's needs.
It's amazing how these small things can have such a big impact. So it sounds like Bright's recommendations are about fostering empathy and understanding.
Exactly. It's about moving from tolerance to true acceptance, celebrating differences. And that shift, it's not just good for individual well-being, it's good for the whole company.
It makes you wonder why more companies aren't doing this already, especially when there are such clear benefits.
That's a great point. And it's interesting because while we're seeing this push for more inclusivity, there's also some pushback. One of the articles actually highlights a decision by SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Management. And it's caused quite a stir. They've decided to drop the word equity from their diversity language.
Really? That seems like a small change, but like you said earlier, words matter. What's the story there? What does it mean?
It's definitely sparked a lot of debate, and we'll get into that right after this quick break.
All right, so SHRM dropping equity from their diversity language. What's the deal with that? It seems kind of small, but also kind of a big deal, right?
Yeah, it's definitely raised some eyebrows. I mean, on the one hand, you can see how some people might think it's just semantics, right? Just a word. But in a field like this, where language is so loaded, even a small change can send a big message.
Exactly. So what are people saying? What are the arguments for and against dropping a term like equity?
Well, those in favor of the change, they argue that equity has become, a bit politically charged.
Okay, I can see that.
And they say that by shifting the focus to diversity and inclusion, it kind of broadens the appeal. It might encourage more companies to get on board with these efforts if it feels less divisive.
Right, finding that common ground, I get it. But then what about the other side? What are the concerns about dropping equity?
The biggest concern is that it signals a move away from actually addressing those underlying systemic issues.
Which, let's be real, are a huge part of the problem, right?
Absolutely. We were talking earlier about those statistics about LGBTQ individuals facing discrimination. A lot of times that's not just one bad apple. It's baked into the system.
Yeah, it's not enough to just have diverse faces in the room if the room itself is rigged.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And dropping equity could be seen as shying away from that tougher work, maybe even bowing to pressure from those who don't want to acknowledge the systemic issues in the first place.
It's like saying, let's just focus on getting everyone to the starting line, but not addressing the fact that some people have to run uphill.
Perfect analogy. And that's a big deal for anyone entering the workforce, but especially folks from underrepresented groups. They're looking at a company's actions, their language, and wondering, are you serious about this, or are you just trying to check a box?
It's about walking the walk, like we were saying, not just talking the talk.
100%. And this ties into another crucial aspect, employer branding. Companies are really thinking about this, especially when it comes to attracting Gen Z.
Right, because they seem to be particularly aware of social issues.
Oh, absolutely. They can sniff out inauthenticity a mile away. Gen Z, they want to work for companies that share their values, that are actually making a difference.
So companies that drop equity from their language, they might think it's playing it safe, but it might actually backfire.
It's a real possibility because at the end of the day, actions speak louder than words. If a company says they value diversity and inclusion, but then they avoid even using the word equity, it makes you wonder how deep their commitment really goes.
Like a red flag. Makes you question their sincerity.
Exactly. And that's why this whole SHRM thing is so interesting. It's like, are they leading a trend here? Are other companies going to follow suit? Or is this going to be a differentiator? Will companies double down on equity to signal that they're serious about real change?
It's almost like a test, in a way, to see who's really in it for the long haul.
Right. Now, speaking of things that could have a major impact on the future of diversity and inclusion, remember the Supreme Court's recent ruling on affirmative action in college admissions?
Oh, yeah, that was big news. But how does that tie into all of this? I mean, that's about education, right? Not employment.
You'd think so, right? But here's where things get really interesting.
Okay, so we've got the Supreme Court ruling about affirmative action in college admissions, but you're saying it could impact hiring practices. How does that work?
Yeah, it's a bit of a ripple effect. So the ruling itself, it's focused on higher education, right?
Right.
But the reasoning behind it, the legal arguments, well, they've got a lot of people in the HR world, especially at bigger companies, a little nervous.
Okay, I'm all ears. What's got them so worried?
So the court's decision, it basically boils down to this idea of colorblind criteria. They decided that considering race as a factor in college admissions, even to promote diversity, it's not constitutional.
Interesting. So how does that translate to the workplace?
Well, there's concern that this same logic, this colorblind idea, could start to seep into employment law. And this is especially a concern for companies that are considered federal contractors.
Federal contractors. What does that mean exactly?
Basically, it's companies that have contracts with the federal government. They're already subject to certain regulations to make sure hiring is fair and equal.
Right. Makes sense.
And there's this worry that this ruling, well, it might embolden some folks to challenge existing diversity programs or try to, limit what companies can do in the future.
So even if a company wants to create a more diverse workforce, they might not be able to consider race as a factor at all.
It's not a done deal, but it's definitely a possibility. This ruling, it kind of throws a wrench in things. It's something that companies, especially those with those federal contracts, are definitely grappling with right now.
Wow. So much to unpack here. We've gone from debates about language to Supreme Court rulings. It feels like the ground is constantly shifting when it comes to diversity and inclusion. For someone just starting their career, it can feel overwhelming, right?
It's a lot, that's for sure. But I wouldn't say it's hopeless, not at all. It's more like, imagine a bustling city, right?
Okay, I like where you're going with this.
There's a lot going on. It can feel confusing, maybe a little intimidating. But with a good map and a sense of where you want to go, you can navigate it.
So what does that map look like for someone entering the workforce right now? What advice would you give them to navigate all of this?
First things first, knowledge is power. Don't just glance at a company's website and call it a day. Do your research. Look at their policies. See if you can find employee reviews. Get a sense of what it's really like to work there.
Don't just take their word for it. Look for those receipts.
Exactly. And just as importantly, know your worth. Don't feel like you have to shrink yourself or downplay who you are to fit in. Find those companies where you can be your authentic self, where that's seen as an asset.
Love that. Be yourself. Find your people.
Exactly. And remember, you have a voice, especially during the interview process. Ask them about their commitment to diversity and inclusion. Ask about ERGs, mentorship programs. See if they're involved in the community.
Be proactive, not just passive.
100%. Now, all of this, it's about what individuals can do, right? But these articles, they also got me thinking about the bigger picture.
Okay, zoom out a little.
Yeah, companies have a responsibility, right, to create inclusive workplaces. But they also have a platform. Imagine if more companies, especially those big players, use their influence to advocate for broader change, to push for policies that create a more equitable world for everyone, not just within their own walls.
It's about using their power for good, pushing for systemic change.
Absolutely. Recognizing that true equity, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. It takes a collective effort to dismantle those systemic barriers.
It's a journey, not a sprint.
Exactly.
Right? Well, you heard it here, folks. Time to grab your maps and start navigating. We'll be back next time with another deep dive into the ever-evolving landscape of the modern workplace. Until then, keep those questions coming.
This has been From Dorms to Desks, job hunting tips for those early in their careers. a podcast brought to you by College Recruiter job search site, which believes that every student and recent grad deserves a great career. Each episode, we dive into tips, tricks, and insights that will help you land your next part-time, seasonal, internship, or entry-level job. Subscribe to this podcast for free now, so you don't miss an episode, and visit www.collegerecruiter.com to find your next great job.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. It's Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and LifeLock has tips to protect your identity. Use strong passwords, set up multi-factor authentication, report phishing, and update the software on your devices. And for comprehensive identity protection, let LifeLock alert you to suspicious uses of your personal information. LifeLock also fixes identity theft, guaranteed or your money back. Stay smart, safe, and protected with a 30-day free trial at LifeLock.com/podcasts. Terms apply.
You know the words dominating today's headlines.
Private equity,
generative capital gains tax,
America's
fueled by market volatility.
Fed rate cuts are sweet.
But do you understand how they impact your world and your wallet? In a world that skims the what, understand the why. Because context changes everything. Subscribe at Bloomberg.com.